Okay, I'm going to do a quick beginner's tutorial on the Singer Classic machine, and this tutorial will cover all the fundamentals of threading the machine, making sure the bobbin is threaded properly and inserted properly, and this will work for any of the heavy-duty machines. All these machines are basically the same except for the number of stitches they offer. And so the Classic machine, this is the basic one. This one was picked up at Walmart, and the price I think was $137, $139, somewhere in that price range. So for the money, it's got a 1-amp motor, which these days is considered somewhat heavy duty. So you can sew jeans with it, and it's a good basic machine, and it will do just about anything anyone needs to put a garment together these days. And it even has an overcasting stitch that we'll demonstrate a bit later. And I'll use a foot that I'll encourage you to pick up as an option. You can do the overcast stitch without the foot, but the foot that they use for that's a specialty foot, really helps if you want to get a good professional stitch on the edge. It's kind of been it replaces a serger stitch, basically is what it does. So anyway, I'm going to get the camera set up and show you how to thread it, how to thread the bobbin first, then we'll go through threading the needle and go through the fundamentals. When you get your machine, you're going to have a blank bobbin in the holder, so just press the little button right here over to the right. It'll pop up and you can pull it out, and then we're going to thread using this bobbin. So let me move the camera around and we'll get started. Okay, we're at the sewing machine and we're going to thread the bobbin first. We're going to use this blue thread in the bobbin, and then I've got a industrial spool of pink thread that we'll use for the top, and I'll show you how I set that up once I start threading the needle. And that way we can see the difference between the top and the bottom thread as we do our demonstrations on tension. So this is a thread, just an all-purpose thread that you can get at any fabric store, any fabric supply, Walmart, any of those kind of places, Michael's, so on and so forth, carry this. So it's good for clothing. It's polyester. You generally don't want to use cotton thread in clothing. Cotton can rot over time, so polyester is good for most clothing. If you're sewing silks and things like that, you want to use a silk thread. So let me show you some fundamentals about getting started with this. First thing, when we put it on the spool, this area here that you need to take out to open up the hole for the spool, it's adhesive, and if you're not careful, if you push it down in there and it gets caught up on the spool, it will mess your tension up. So always take scissors or something, you can ream it out. Okay, we're going to go through how to wind the bobbin. So your machine will come with the bobbin down in the bobbin case, so just open it up and take it out. And you've got two different options on how to put the thread on. In your accessory guide, you'll have this little post here that will fit here, so you can put your thread on there, or the default way is to put it on here. Now what you want to do is you want it to come off the top, and the reason for that is there's a little slot here that they use to put the thread in when they ship it to you, and if you get it anywhere near that, it may catch on that. You can kind of see how it hooks onto it. So you want it coming from the top when you put it on. So the label that you read, the main one's on the left side. So you put that on there like that, and so this thread will come off the spool properly. You want to put the cover on like that, and that allows it to get up high enough to where it doesn't catch on the slip when it comes off. So we're going to come over to this first little guide here. It's number 1, and just hold the fabric like this and take and put it down in there, and you'll have it in there. Then if you look at your guide here, it shows you to bring your thread this way, and see if I can do this without getting my arm in the way too much. get some tension on it and bring it all the way around. Roll up the thread here. Anyway, so you're going to come from here and around and back over here to the spool like this. So once you get over there, you're going to notice the bobbin has a couple of holes in it. It's also got a couple of marks that are not holes. That's, I guess, where they form the plastic on these. So take your thread in between here and feed it up through one of those holes. And it's easier said than done sometimes. I'll try my other hand here. There it goes. So if you can see that, I've got it thread through the middle and then through the top. And so you'll take it and you'll push it down on the post. So you have enough of this thread hanging out where you can hold on to it. And what you're going to do is move it over, and that engages it winding the bobbin. And then when you're finished, you'll push it back this way. That'll allow the needle to take over and the bobbin won't spin. So we're going to pull it back. We're going to press on the foot pedal. Once you get a few rounds, you're going to pull this up and you're going to cut it off as close to the bobbin as you can. Then you go until you have enough thread and cut it off, and then you'll pull back this way. That engages the needle again, and pull your bobbin off. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how to thread the top of the machine, and then we'll go down and show you the path down as I move the camera so you can see it. But while we're up here, let me show you how to do the first few steps of threading the machine. Okay, so now we unwrap it from around there. We've got numbers 1, which are already in from doing our bobbin. Number 2 is here, and then I'll show you the difference as I go down. But I'm going to use the pink thread that I've got for my top thread. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off now that you see how you put it on that spool. Set that aside, and let me get my thread over here. So when you use these external stands, you want to put the thread path pretty much in the same way that it would come if it were coming off the spool. So I've got it right here where it lines up. So we go through 1 is there, 2 is this tension dial here, so we're going through number 2, and we're going to pull the thread where it goes. There's a little bitty piece there of metal there. It's going to go in between it and this main one. So let me move the camera down so you can see what's going on down below, and we'll take it on down and we'll show you how to insert the bobbin after that. Okay, I wanted to get a close-up of the way it comes through this little hook here. So you come around it, and then you're going to see it slide in between that little disc there and the hook. And then we're going to come on down, so you can see number 3's here. And I'll show you, let me move the camera again so I can show you the rest of this. Okay, so we come from 2, 3 down here. We loop it around 4, which is the little loop there, back up. We turn our wheel until this guide is in its highest position. Oh, by the way, while you're threading, make sure your presser foot is up. What that does, it releases the tension disc that's hidden in here and allows your thread to sink down in there. And then when you lower your foot, the tension disc will clamp down on it. So if you're having any kind of a problem ever, what you want to do is raise your foot, put tension on the thread, pull it tight where it will lock down into the tension disc, and then put your foot back down, and that should correct the issue. So we come up and we come around, and that's number 5. Come around that hook, and we head down towards the needle. So let me reposition the camera down there so you can see what we do at the needle. Okay, now that we've come down around this hoop and down here, you'll see number 6. What you're going to want to do, this is the end of the thread in my right hand. I'm going to take and hold on to it on this side, And there's a little guide right there that you take the thread, put it under horizontally like that, and then pull it down, and you'll see it's hooked onto that. Now the next one a lot of people miss. It's number 7, and right below the needle shank here is a little area that we need to go into with our thread. So again, take it horizontal, pull it all the way to the back and around, and you see it will hook into there. That's an important part. If you miss that, oftentimes you'll get a thread nest when you start stitching. So that one's important too, so be sure and catch it. Okay, let's see how the needle threader works. What you want to do is turn the wheel and get your needle up there in its highest position. And then bring the threader down. You take your thread and you go over the hook. Now my hand's in the way. Anyway, you go over that hook and hook it around and pull this lever, and there's a little bitty wire that goes through the eye of the needle there. What you want to do is go under it so it can grab a hold of the thread, and then release it here, and it will pull it through to the back, and you'll have that little loop. You can grab a hold of the little loop, and your needle is threaded. So it's as simple as that. If you have the wrong size needle and the thread is too big, you'll have trouble getting it through that needle eye, and it'll damage the little bitty wire that goes through there on your threader. So be sure and learn how to match the thread size to the needle, and you won't have any problems. So this machine comes with, I think it's size 14 needle. Look and see here. Yeah, it's a size 14 needle, which is about medium weight, and any of the normal polyester threads that you get like this will work in that without any problem at all. When you start getting some more specialty heavy-duty threads for denim and things, you need a bigger needle. So okay, that takes care of that. Now let me reposition the camera where we can see down in this casing good, and I'm going to show you how to insert the bobbin and get everything going correctly so that you can stitch successfully. I'll show you how to thread the bobbin now. Make sure the thread is coming off the top side of the bobbin this way, and then you're going to take it and insert it. Just drop it into the case, and what you want to do is bring this thread to the front kind of this way, and then there's a little hook right there that it's going to go into. It's going to slide under it. You're going to bring it around to the back like this and set it down, hold the thread, and then put your case back on like that right over it. And I noticed it kind of slipped over to the side. I really want to keep it to the back, and that keeps it hooked around that little tension bar. And let me take this off and make sure that you can see that clearly. It's right there, and the thread goes under it and goes to the back of the machine. That's really important because that's the way it forms a proper stitch. So let me set things up. I'll show you how to draw the bobbin thread up from the needle and get ready to sew next. Okay, now we're ready to pick up the bobbin thread and bring it up to the top for us to sew. I've got pink thread in the needle and I've got blue thread in the bobbin so we can see what's going on. So what you're going to do is just simply rotate your hand wheel, and you're going to rotate it towards you this way. So this way towards you. That's the proper direction. Put your needle down and hold on to your thread, and as it pulls up, you're going to see it go around the bobbin there and grab the thread, and we're going to pull it up just like that. So now we have our bobbin thread pulled up. And to get ready to sew, what we're going to do is pull some of this out. Make sure we have some thread pulled out. You can pull it as long as your presser foot is up. It releases the tension. And then we're going to take it and put it through the slot, and make sure it goes straight through that slot, and pull it to the back of the machine. And then when you lower your foot, you know that everything's in there and it's ready to sew at that point. One of the things I'll tell you is you can verify your tension on your needle to make sure it's through the disc and threaded properly by, let me raise the foot up, I'm going to grab my thread for my needle and pull it back to the front. And so we go ahead and lower the foot, and again that engages the tension. We turn the tension all the way down, the tension knob all the way down to 0, and we pull and the thread comes out very easily. As we rotate it to the right all the way to the maximum number of 9, you see it bending the needle. That tells me that the tension disc are clamping down on it, giving us the tension. And then I'm going to take it back, depending on the fabric I'm sewing and what thread. You'll adjust it anywhere in between 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9, depending on what it is. But in general, you're going to stay in between 3 and 5 on general fabric. So I'll start at 4 and just set it on 4. Let me put that to the back and I'll show you what I'm doing on the tension dial and explain the dials for you at the top of the machine next. Okay, let's take a look at the dials on top of the machine. There are 3 of them here, and actually 4 if we count the presser foot pressure dial. This is our tension for our needle, and you heard me telling you about from 0, and we turn it all the way up to 9. 9 being the most tension, it clamps down on the thread. 0 being the least, where the disc open up. So that's what I was saying, start on 0, pull the thread, it's easy, and then as you rotate it over to number 9, it should get tight and start bending the needle to where you can't even pull the thread out. So we're going to start on a setting of 4 for our tension. This is our needle position, and so the middle, it's got a little indicator on here showing you the middle. That is the left. It moves the needle over to the left, back to the center, and that moves the needle over to the right. And I'll show you some things to do to get your needle to move at any position you want by using the width indicator over here when we have it set on a straight stitch. We'll go through that in just a minute. This is the width of our zigzag, or like I just said, if you're doing a straight stitch, this will control the needle position. So what you do to have full control of the needle position is it works from the right to the left. So if you have it in the middle, you can move it from the middle to the left. If you have it to the left, this won't move it at all. If you have it all the way over to the right, as you move this, it'll move it all the way from the right all the way to the left. So if you want full control, move your needle over to the right, and then as you move this up to 6, it's all the way over to the left. If you move it all the way back over to 0, it moves the needle all the way over to the right. So if you want to adjust it anywhere in between, just use your width indicator. And for example, on 3, it's pretty much back in the middle. So set it on the right needle position, put it on a straight stitch, and you can use this to control the needle position anywhere you want. And I will show you a wider view and you'll see the needle moving, so you can get a good view of what's going on there next. But let me go through this. This little button here, if you turn it to the right, it tightens it. It's got a plus sign showing it to the right. That puts more pressure on the presser foot. So if you have thin material, light material, you want to put more pressure on it so that it'll feed better. If you get some of the heavier material, depending on how heavy it is, you can back off of it a bit, or you may need to tighten it some. It just depends on the style of fabric you're using, and there are a lot of different variables. This is one thing even some of the more expensive machines don't have, and it's one of the reasons I like this machine, is you can adjust the pressure on the presser foot. And you'll learn when you're sewing, for example, if I'm sewing denim jeans with a very thick side seam on the hem line, normally you would tighten this up, but what I do is I loosen it because it feeds fine, but when it hits the hump of that side seam, it allows the foot to ride up over it easier. So it makes sense, it's not pushing down so hard and it can ride up over it. So sometimes the logic is reversed. Again, it depends on what you're using, but the good thing is you have it here to learn and understand, and you'll have it as an option. So that covers everything on top. Let me back off and show you how using this will move the needle, and we'll go through the controls on the front of the machine. Okay, I'm focused on the needle, and I'm going to show you how it moves. I'll show you in a minute what a straight stitch setting is on the dial, but I've got it set on the straight stitch, which is the default what it's going to be set on when I show you the dial. And what I'm going to do is use that width indicator on the top. I've got my needle position to the right, and it's on number 3 right now on the width. So as I move it up, you're going to see the needle move to the left, so it's on 6. And now I'm going to go all the way back down. There's 3, all the way down to 0, and you see the needle is to the right. So watch it as it moves. So again, setting the needle position on the right, you have full control with a straight stitch selected by using the width dial to your needle position. That'll become more important as you start using some of the specialty feet and you're trying to align a seam up, and to do a hem or something, you may want to use this to line it up, lower your needle, and get it at just the right position. And that's what that allows you to do. So again, straight stitch, needle position to the right, and then turn your width indicator, and it'll let you put your position anywhere in the positions from the left to the right. Alright, let's go over the stitch selector and the length selector and the reverse handle next. Okay, on the front here, starting from the left, this is our reverse dial. So when we want to reverse stitch, we press it down, and that will allow it to go in reverse. This will set our stitch length. So 0 means it doesn't feed at all. You turn it over to S1, that will give you the blue colored stitches down here in your stitch selector, and then turning it back to any of the lengths in black will give you all the black selectors. So you're going to use this to switch over to some of the specialty decorative stitches and utility stitches, and then otherwise you'll just use the length indicator to show what's going on here. So by default stitch length is 2.5 to 3. So somewhere in that area there, you'll learn that. But in general, the heavier the thread, the thicker the material, the longer the stitch length. The thinner the thread, the lighter the material, you go with a short stitch length. Say all the way down to 2. But 2.5 to 3, somewhere in there, is a good place to start. This is your stitch selector. So I told you we were on a straight stitch when we were moving the needle position. That's where that works. This is your buttonhole stitch here. This is your blind hem when you hem pants or anything you want to blind hem in. And these are all the various other stitches, utility stitches that are used, decorative stitches and such. So what I would suggest you do is get you some black thread, get you some white fabric. You can use an old pillowcase or something like that, and go through each one of these, stitch them out on it, and mark what it is, make a note or something so you know what it is, and use that as your reference as you go forward. So for example, on this one, on black, we've got that stitch, but if we turn over to S1, it converts to the blue stitch. So that's how to work that. So that tells you how to do everything on the front of the machine. I'm going to go ahead and go back to 2.5. Go ahead and turn back around to a straight stitch, and I'll do some stitching demonstrations to show you how to do that next. Okay, we're ready to sew now. So let me show you a pair of scissors that you may have seen your mom or grandma had. These are pinking shears, and what they're good for, you see how this fabric is fraying on the edge here, and you use a serger generally to trim seams and to get them under control, but you don't have a serger at this point. And I even use these when I'm cutting fabric out and working with big drapery fabric, any of that stuff that'll unravel just while handling it. I cut with these pinking shears. So what they do when you go down the edge is they will trim it. See if I can keep these fairly straight. they do that to the edge of your fabric, and that keeps it from fraying when you're handling it. So if you really get rough with it, that one didn't get pinged very good. But anyway, if you trim it with these shears, you can handle it without it fraying so much. Let me do this edge here. There we go. Anyway, that'll allow you to handle it without it fraying. And even when you sew it and you part your seams after you've done your stitch at your 1/2 inch or 5/8 inch mark, that helps. You can lay it down and it won't fray on the inside when you wash it and stuff. So get you some pinking shears, and you'll have them forever, and they do a good job when it comes to trimming the fabric and working with it to keep it from getting the little strings all over the place. Okay, to start sewing, we're going to put our fabric underneath the presser foot. We're going to lower the presser foot. And one of the rules in sewing is you start out with what they call a back tack. So what I do is I go forward the distance that I'm going to go backwards, and then I go backwards and I come forward. The reason I do that, I don't want to go forward, backwards, and then forward. That puts too much stress on the end of the fabric where you're trying to tack it down. So press your reverse. We've got our stitch length set at 2.5. We're doing a straight stitch. We've got our needle position. Let me go ahead and put it in the center. And when you put it in the center, you got to take your width back to 0, because anything beyond 0, it's going to move it over to the left of the center position. So when you put it in center, put your width back to 0. I've got the tension set at 4, and I'm going to sew on, this is called muslin. It's cheap cotton fabric is all it is. We use it a lot for testing. So we go backwards about 3 stitches, and we release the handle, and then we start sewing and we go forward. When you start sewing, hold on to the thread tails behind the foot. That keeps you from getting a little mess underneath your fabric, a little ball of wadded up thread. So always do that, hang on to it, and I even hang on to it for the first few stitches when I go forward. It just helps pull the fabric nice and straight. So just push the presser foot. You just guide your fabric. You don't want to pull it or anything. You want to let the machine feed it by default. And you can guide it with one of the guides to try to keep your seam straight. None of this is straight that I'm sewing right now. So I'm coming to the end. So I may turn the wheel to get right to the end. And then I'm going to hold the reverse wheel, and I can either use the foot to go backwards, or I can turn it by hand just to make sure I keep it under control to go 2 or 3 stitches. I go 3 back, and I'll go 1 forward and raise the foot to its highest position, raise the presser foot, and that releases the tension, and you can pull your thread out, and there's a thread cutter right here that you can use. So I'll go ahead and use it, and that will cut your thread. Take your tails, move them back to the back of the machine, and look at your stitch. So what you're looking for is, this fabric's a little bit tougher because it's so thin, but you're looking to see if there are any loose loops on the back side of the material. This is so thin you can actually see the pink, which is the top, as it comes around in loops with the blue bottom thread. And on this side, we don't see any of the blue. So I would take this tension, actually that looks pretty good. You may take it up to 4.5 after you do that. It could be maybe just a tad bit tighter, but if you see this and you lay your fabric down, it should lay flat. I'm going to show you what it does when your tension is too tight. Let me cut my threads here. Okay, I'm going to tighten the tension up to 9. So we've turned it all the way up. So now the top thread is going to be really hard to pull, and what it's going to do is when the needle comes up, it's really going to pull hard on this loop here on the bottom, and you'll see it, the result of it being too tight. Okay, that's on 9. I did a few stitches there. I'm going to go down to 7. Do a few stitches at 7. Go down to 6 and do a few stitches. Go to 5. A few stitches. I'm going to go all the way down to 3. Do a few stitches. I'm going to go down to 2. Do a few stitches. And I'm going to go down to 1. Do a few stitches. And then finally 0 and do a few stitches. And we'll see the difference between those. I'm going to go back up to 4 to end here so we can tie it off. Alright, needle at the highest position, and we can pull our thread out. I'm going to use scissors to cut this a little bit closer this time. And let's look at the back. I'm leaving the thread down here so we can see where we started. Okay, you'll see the puckering on that, how the thread is kind of, you see the little lines there. That tells you your tension is too tight on the top. As we come down, you'll see it starts laying flatter and flatter, and so somewhere around the 6 mark, it looks good. The fabric's laying fairly flat. It's got a little bit of a roll in it. So when we got back down to around 4 or 5, I think I went from 6 to 4, is where it looks about like that looked. You can see here when it got too loose. See the pink thread, how we have the loops. That means our tension is too loose. So when you see that, your tension is too loose. When you see this down here, it puckered up, it's too tight, it's pulling too hard. You can see the strain on the fabric there. And somewhere around in here is just right. That was around 4 on this setting here. And this is where it got loose down here. It doesn't show so much on this side, it's going to show on that side. And what happens is your bobbin tension generally doesn't have to be changed on the machines. Only in extreme circumstances do you have to change that. But the bottom has tension pulling this way, the top interlocks this way and pulls up. The idea is for it to be balanced enough to where the thread does its join in the middle of the fabric. It's a little bit harder to do on this fabric because it's so thin, but you can see it's good and tight here, and that's what you would want. So, and this is too loose. So that shows you from extremely tight to the middle range. The middle range is fairly forgiving, but if you get too loose, you get this. If you get too tight, you get that. So that kind of shows you something on the tension. Let's talk about needles and the importance of needles next. So let me get reset up for that, and we'll go through that. Okay, I'm going to go through needles and the different style of needles there are and what their use is. It's very important when you sew to know the appropriate needle and the appropriate thread for the fabric that you're sewing. Here's the most common needle. It's a universal regular point needle. I'd suggest when you start, get the sizes, multiple sizes that you can get in these packets. These numbers, the big number is the metric, the little number is the US measurement. So they're the same thing. 80 metric means 11 US. And this is the style that Singer assigns to their needles. This is a style 2020, for example. And in this package, I've got an 8011, a 9014, and a 116. So in US it says 11, 14, 16. Metric, it's 80, 90, 100. So that's the way you measure the needles. Singer colors the shank to tell you what color or what size they are. The orange, the blue, and the purple will tell you the size. So it's kind of a color-coded way to figure out what you've got if you can't quite read the writing on it. So anyway, this is a generic needle, general cotton and things. It'll sew. So that's about the best way to say it. Most fabrics, when you get into really sewing things, you need something beyond this. So let me show you what those are. For knits, t-shirts. I've got some knit here somewhere. Can you find it? There it is. This is a cotton, like an old t-shirt. You'd want to use a ballpoint needle for it. And the ballpoint needles are just that, they're a ball, and they separate the fabric where you see the knit, the weave, and they don't cut it the way other needles do. So use that on any of the knits and you'll have success. There's also a stretch needle. I don't have one of those here. It's in my stash somewhere, but there's a stretch needle that can be used for like real stretchy knits. A lot of people find using the stretch needle works well for some of the finer knits. So either a ballpoint or a stretch, either one should work, and I'd get both of them in my stash. That way, if you try one and it doesn't look quite right, you can try either the stretch or the ballpoint and it may look better. So use, again, buy enough fabric where you can test your stitches. Okay, that's the ballpoint. Let's go to the denim. This and this. Got two of them here. These are denim needles. This is the Smets. I like Smets needles. This is the Singer, being the same thing. These are identical in size. They're both 116. The only difference is the manufacturer is different. So I'd get size 16 and size 18. And Singer, you can buy them where you've got size 16 and 18 in one pack. That may be a good option for you. But have the size 18 in stock, because if you ever hem old pair of Levi's that are 100% cotton, they're 14.5 ounce denim, that side seam is extremely dense. And I've tested machines. You can see some of my test videos showing the difference between using a size 16 and a size 18 needle on denim. So that's what I'd get. Let me show you what I use mostly for denim. This is a top stitching needle, and it's a size 116. And so this is what I use when I am sewing denim. The reason I use a stretch needle, a top stitch needle, the eye of the needle is larger. And I use heavy thread, so that allows that heavy thread to pass through without damaging it in any way. That way your top stitching looks really nice. So in denim, top stitching needles are a good option. They've got the same style point that a denim needle has. Bigger eye for thicker top stitching fabric gives you a little bit better results. So that's what I primarily use when I sew my jeans. Last is the leather needle. I'm going to differentiate between leather and faux leather, fake man-made leather. Use this for leather. You can use it for faux leather. Most people use a denim needle, a size 16 denim needle, and it works great for faux man-made leather. But when you sew real leather, cowhide, sheepskin, pigskin, any of that stuff, get the leather needle. The reason you want it, the tip of the needle is like a knife, and it cuts through the skin to form the stitch, which is what you need when it comes to leather. So for leather, use a leather needle. For faux leather, you can get away with a denim needle. Again, try to have both in your stash. For pinning, I'm going to show you several options. I don't pin a whole lot. I've learned to sew using an industrial technique where I don't use pins on anything that's, especially leg seams, things like that. I just know how to hold the fabric, but I'm going to give you some pointers on pins. First off, these style pins are the best ones to use rather than the ones with the ball heads on them. These will distort when you put the pin in your seam. The ball raises the seam up a little bit and it distorts it. If you use these pins, it won't do that. They're harder to use and all that, but you'll get a better stitch with these old style flat head pins than you will with these pins. I got these out because this is important. Again, when you're using knits, don't use these sharp needles. Use a ball pin needle. And again, it's just like your sewing needle. It won't cut the fabric. It'll actually go around the weave without cutting it. So these are ball pins. If I have to pin a double knit fabric or any kind of a knit, this is what I use instead of the standard needles. And standard needles, my favorite needles are these quilter's needles because they're longer, it's much easier to use, and See how flat the head is? So it's got a nice flat head. It keeps it from, the head is actually flatter than the needle, so these don't distort when you stick them in the fabric, like so. I wouldn't use it on this fabric because it's got a sharp pin, but when you get it in the fabric, it stays nice and flat. So it's not distorting it compared to where you put the ball pin in and the head is fat and you get it to the end. So the idea when you pin is to try to use just about all of the needle, and that ties everything down nicely. So you do, something that's a little bit too much, but do something like that. You can see when you stretch the fabric out, the pin is actually higher than what the end of it is here. So that's a good option. They're longer. It makes them easier to get in and out and use. So that's why I like using those. Another great option, especially if you sew faux leather, are these wonder clips. These work great. They're quick and easy to get on your seam. And then when you're sewing, you just press down like that and pull it to the side and it comes right off. These come in boxes of 50. If you buy them, get 2 boxes, because when you get going with these on a long seam of some sort, you can go through 50 of them easy. I learned that the hard way. Last, let's see, well, not last. Get you a seam ripper. Don't buy one of these. Buy them 2 and 3 at a time. They get dull very quickly, and you can rip your fabric if you're trying to get a seam out and you use a dull seam ripper. So make sure you have 2 or 3 of these on hand at all times, 2 or 3 spare, because you'll need to rip a long seam out. You'll suddenly realize it's dull, and you'll have to grab another one. Throw the dull one away. Don't keep it around. And you go through them. They're like paper towels. You go through them quickly if you use them very much. If you sew very much, you're going to rip seams out. Scissors. These are the ones you can find at any fabric store, Walmart. They're okay. When you get the money, these are Kai scissors. They're made in Japan, and there's absolutely no comparison in the quality of these to these. But the difference is these are $7, $8, whatever. These, I bought this with another one, was like $60. So they're more expensive, but you really get what you pay for in scissors. They'll sharpen these for free if you send them back. They have a lifetime warranty on them. I've got several different sizes of these. Absolutely love these scissors. They're so nice. And what's nice about them is when you need to cut at the very tip, and this one is curved. So if I've sewed my seam and I need to cut a piece of fabric like that, it's curved and I can get it right in there. So I can get it right in. Let me turn around where I can hold it. I can get it right in there and just snip that thread off like that. These, the tip is not nearly as precise, and so when you're trying to cut something off, sometimes you'll have to hit it twice. Sometimes it'll do it perfectly, but highly recommend the Kai shears. Let's see, back to needles for a minute. This is my stash. It's good for you to have a stash of needles. And this is ballpoint leather, denim, heavy, just generic heavy duty needles. That means it's just thicker, heavier. It's not for denim, it's not for anything. It's just a general purpose heavy needle. Yeah, and you see I've got a lot of ballpoints because I do sew a lot of knits. But anyway, get you a stash. These don't have a shelf life. They'll last. Every time I go to the fabric store or whatever, I'll pick up a pack or 2 of whatever I need, and I just put them in my stash so I have them. Okay, I've got a little bit different material here to show you proper tension. This will allow us to see it join in the middle of the fabric better. So let's use it to show you proper tension. So I'm going to set the tension up to about 4.5. I think it's probably about what we want for this. So let's go ahead and sew this and have a look at our fabric. Okay, I'm going to get the distance that I want to back stitch first. And one of the things to do is pull the thread tails out long enough where you can grab a hold of them easily. My bobbin thread is a little short from cutting it, so I pulled it out a little bit longer. Makes it just easier to reach back there and grab a hold of it and get it secure before you start. One of the nice things when you get into these kind of plaids is you can follow a thread line. So I'm going to try to get on the black thread line if I can. So here we go. So I'm going to back stitch to start out and then go forward. Okay, so the first half is probably proper tension. I'm going to do the second half at like a 1. Do a few, we'll go down to 0 for a few, and then I'm going to go all the way up to 9 for the rest. And back down to 4.5 to tie it off, get it correct. Just do a few back stitches and come forward a stitch or two. And again, get the needle at the highest position and then pull your thread back. Okay. This will allow us to see much better what's going on. Okay, you're going to have to look closely here. In the black, there's our pink thread. We don't see any blue, we see only pink. We turn it over, we should only see blue and no pink, and that's what we do. That's proper tension. We don't see any of the pink. You can barely see it because that's black thread, and so it could be just a little bit tighter. I was at 4.5. As I told you before, I thought 5 would be perfect. So seeing that it would work, I'd actually go up to 5. Until I couldn't see that pink thread anymore and it joined in the middle. I'll do a few stitches here in just a second at the higher tension. Matter of fact, when we go to 9 here, you can just barely see that pink. 9 is too tight because you can see how it's kind of gathered up the thread there. It's not laying as flat as it is here. It's kind of puffed up. That tells you the tension's too tight. And then again, as we start loosening the thread, you see the loops on the back side, and then I tightened it back up to the higher setting here, which was 9. So the 9 pulled it up where you couldn't see anything at all, and then I went back to normal here. So anyway, that shows you on a little bit thicker fabric what's going on. Let me sew a few here with like a 5.5 setting. Let's see if we can get that. I'm going to go up to 6 and see what it looks like. So always buy extra fabric when you're going to sew, and it will allow you to do these tests. It will save you so much time and effort. You won't waste fabric and you won't waste time when you do that. So get enough where you can cut off a few strips and run through and do your test stitches, and it'll be so much easier, and you'll sew with so much more confidence once you can see this. Okay, that's at 6. I'm going to go down to 5.5. This machine will sew fast, so if you floor it, the problem with this table, it's a plastic table, so it's going to jump all over the place, so just try to keep it slow and steady. Needle to the highest position. What you'll see when it's at its highest position, you'll see the top thread pull around the bobbin. When it disappears, you know it's pretty much at the top position, and it will release the thread. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. So you can see down on that stitch, I don't see any of the pink on the reverse side of it. So somewhere around 5.5 to 6 will be a good stitch for this. So that's what you do. You just get a strip, sew a few lines of stitches, figure out which one's the best one. And what I would do normally on this is I would do one tension down each one of these, or half that way down with one tension, the other half the other. That way it's easier to keep up with what you did. and when you look at it, it makes more sense. Just leave the tails on the end you started so you know which end you started on. And so I know on this one, you know what the tension was. It was 6 on the first half and 5.5 on the second half, so I can kind of look at it then and decide what I want to do. So anyway, that shows you tension. Okay, I'm going to use a special foot. This is called the over edge foot that you can get online, and it has a guide right here on the right side that you can follow your fabric by, and then you can see where the needle is. It's got a little bar there, so what that allows the thread to do is have a little bit more thread to cover the edge, so it loosens the thread. Go ahead and press the little back release here, pop off our pressure foot, and put on our over edge foot. You can use your regular pressure foot to do this. You just have to learn to guide it nicely. What's nice about this one is it's got that guide right there for the fabric to follow. So you get a good even stitch all the way down your fabric when you use this foot. So that's why I'm showing it to you and highly recommend it. So, alright, I've got the S1 activated and it's on stitch D, and stitch A is a straight stitch, and as you turn the lever to the right, one click will be B, 2C, 3D, so on and so forth when you look at your manual. So we're on stitch D with the S1 active, so that's the blue stitch. So I'll show you this one. You can see how it's going back and forth. It's a reinforced stitch. Guide it against that little black guide. Keep it nice and straight. Look at my tension. I've got my tension set at 3. And that looks pretty good. You want it in between 2 and 3 depending on how thick your fabric is. What I'm doing with my left hand, I just want to make sure that I keep the tension up next to that guide as it does this. As it can tend to walk away from it some. Get to the end, just keep pushing it a little bit so it stays right up next to the edge. Okay, let's have a look at what we have here. There's our serged over the edge seam, and so you can see how nicely it does with that guide on there. Everything's nice and even, so that's why I recommend getting the guide. With practice, you can do it with a straight stitch foot. What you want to do is keep your fabric kind of lined up about right there when you're using the regular pressure foot, and you can get the same results. You can kind of turn the needle and see you want it to go off the edge over here. That's what creates the serged edge. It wraps around it, and again, your tension should be in between 2 and 3. Mine was on 3 on this fabric. And if you press it, it'll lay flat. It'll be nice. So that's the over edge foot and how to do the serged edge on the machine. So again, looking at your manual on page 24, we're using the D stitch, which is that stitch right there. And again, that's A, and as you turn the knob to the right, it will go to B, C, and D on the blue setting, the S1 setting. That's that stitch. So anyway, I hope this helps you get started on your machine. It's a good fundamental machine. Again, you can sew leather and denim on it. which makes it really nice, and hopefully you'll get along with it, and everything will work out good for you. This should give you a good fundamental foundation to get started with, and if I can help you with anything, post it in the comments section, and I'll see if I can answer your questions. So that's it for now. If you have any questions, let me know. Take care.